God hates vegans. No, just kidding. God doesn't hate vegans. Damn it. Seriously though, this is a topic that has come up several times in the past for me. And it used to be a quick Google search would come up with an explanation as to how the crazy fundamentalist pastor was just that. He was crazy, and his interpretation of the Bible was way off and had no basis in reality whatsoever. However, this time, a Google search finds a lot of supporting documents for people who believe that the abstinence from meat is demonic. So I'm gonna debunk that forever. There's after this, there's no excuse for anybody to believe that if you eat only vegetables, you are a devil worshiper, because that's the passage that we're going to be reading through is the same one that everybody likes to quote when making this ridiculous argument. It's 1 Timothy chapter 4, verses 1 through 3. And but before we get into that, I think we're going to need a little context first, so you can really understand what the heck that passage is even talking about. Now, Paul was writing a letter to Timothy, a young pastor, and he was giving him instructions on the rules on becoming a pastor, what God requires of a person before they can be a pastor, the conduct for a pastor, how a pastor can protect his congregation from things like apostasy, how to spot apostasy. And I think that if you understand that that's what this letter is about, then when you read the passage that many people like to use, it'll make a little bit more sense, and you'll start to understand that it doesn't really mean what everyone says it means. Verse 1. Now the Spirit speaketh expressly, that in the latter times some shall depart from the faith, giving heed to seducing spirits and doctrines of devils. Paul is telling Timothy, look, man, there's going to come a time someday where people are going to kind of, fall by the wayside. They're going to start doing things they're not supposed to do. They're going to give in to temptation. That's giving heed to seducing spirits and doctrines of devils, meaning they're just going to start doing anything that God told them not to do. Verse 2, speaking lies and hypocrisy, having their conscience seared with a hot iron. So basically, the people who are being seduced by spirits and abiding by doctrines of devils are naturally, they're speaking lies and hypocrisy. They're going to church and doing one thing and then going home and doing another. Their conscience is being seared with a hot iron. It's being dulled. It's becoming easier for them to be a hypocrite. It's becoming easier for them to do the wrong thing. The guilt doesn't quite bother them that much anymore. Verse 3, forbidding to marry and commanding to abstain from meats which God hath created to be received with thanksgiving of them which believe and know the truth. Back then, Jewish people did not believe that they were allowed to marry other Jewish people. Even sometimes today they believe that. And they also believe that you were not allowed to eat pork or shellfish or unleavened bread, all because these things are not kosher. So forbidding to marry in the verse is referring to somebody who is telling you that you can't marry someone who's a Gentile. And abstaining from eating meats is if someone were to tell you that you are no longer allowed to eat pork because our old traditions say so. That's just not the case. Okay, so now that we've fully broken down all three verses, let's go ahead and let's read them all back. And what we're going to do is we're going to replace some of the language with the language that we use today. And you know, fundamentalists hate it when you do this. So I think that's even more reason for us to go ahead and break it down Barney style one last time. Paul is telling Timothy, he's saying, and I'm going to use my cheat sheet here, I'm sorry, basically he's saying, look man, in the future there's people who are going to start falling by the wayside. They're going to start giving into temptation, and they're going to start doing things they're not supposed to be doing. And you're gonna know, because they're gonna start coming to church and they're gonna start living a double life. They're gonna start becoming hypocrites essentially, and their conscience is gonna be a little bit dulled in the process. And the more dull their conscience gets, the easier it's going to be for them to come into your church and start making crazy, outrageous claims like, you can't marry this person, or you can't eat that kind of meat. Does that make a little more sense for you guys now? Much wraps up my explanation as far as, you know, vegans being the devil's, I don't even know, man. I don't know what kind of crazy things these fundamentalists have been saying to you guys, but I apologize for them, and I will pray for them, and I'll pray for you guys too. But just know that not all Christians are like that. A lot of them don't know any better, you know, when they're introduced with scripture like that. If they haven't been doing their homework, they're not going to be able to give you a good explanation. So that's what I'm here for. Like the video, like it. If you have something to say about it, say something. If you want to argue the existence of God, you can go somewhere else. That is not the scope of this video. There are plenty of other online forums you control for that. I'm just looking for, you know, good old-fashioned debate. And you know what? If I get enough feedback on this, you know, I'll do another video, you know, I'll prove definitively why I believe that veganism is God's diet, beyond a shadow of a doubt. And I'll even use Pastor Steve Anderson's Bible to do it. So go ahead and give me some likes. See you next time. Is that it? Are we done? Do we turn this thing off here? Right here?